I always knew something was off, but I didn't expect the truth to arrive in the form of an empty chair at my mother's birthday dinner. "Sorry, sweetheart, this table's for family only," she said, voice sweet as syrup, but sharp as broken glass. I stood there holding a small bouquet, yellow lilies, her favorite, dressed in the only nice outfit I owned. My hands started to sweat around the plastic wrapping as the waiter looked at me for direction. My eyes flicked to the table. My siblings were already seated, laughing, sipping wine. The velvet chairs were all filled, except one. Right beside my sister. "That's fine," I said, plastering on a smile. "Where should I sit?" Mom pointed toward the back, near the swinging kitchen door and the trash bin. A fold-out chair waited for me like a punishment. Laughter erupted. Ivy, my sister, murmured something to Nathan, who smirked but didn't look at me. My father didn't even flinch. I walked slowly to the chair, sat, and faced the wall. The clinking of crystal glasses behind me felt louder than it should have. "Can I get you anything to start?" the waiter asked gently. "Just water," I said. That moment should have broken me. And for a second, it nearly did. But sitting beside the smell of bleach and food scraps, I realized something. I'd spent years begging for a seat at that table. Not just tonight, but every day growing up. And maybe I was done asking. The dinner dragged on behind me, full of toasts and laughter that felt like background noise from a world I didn't belong to anymore. They didn't offer me a menu. No one asked if I wanted dessert. But when the bill came, sleek, black, and heavy with 4 digits, the waiter brought it to me. My mother didn't even look up. "Ria's got it," she said with a smirk. "She's doing well now, aren't you, sweetie?" I looked at the bill, $4,600. My stomach turned. Nathan raised his glass. "Big shot real estate queen. Come on, show off a little." Ivy giggled, already reaching for her phone. "Yeah, Ria. Don't make it awkward." I smiled. Not wide. Not bitter. Just enough. "Actually," I said softly, folding my napkin, "this isn't my table." The room hushed. Forks froze midair. My mother's smile faltered. "What did you say?" she asked, voice tightening. I said, "This isn't my table. I wasn't invited to sit with you." I was humiliated, ignored, dismissed. "And now you want me to pay for it?" They blinked. Ivy's mouth hung open. Nathan laughed, but it sounded more like a cough. My father finally looked at me, for the first time all evening. I stood, heels steady on the marble floor. "I'll cover what I ordered. My water." Then I turned to the waiter. "They'll split the rest. They're family." The walk from the table to the exit was the longest 10 seconds of my life. Not because I was embarrassed, but because I could feel their eyes boring into my back. My mother's cold disbelief. Ivy's confusion. Nathan's smirk fading into something less certain. And my father? Silent, as always. A man who once told me, "You don't earn respect, Ria, you wait your turn for it." Outside, the night air was warm, almost tender against my cheeks. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My heels clicked against the pavement, and each step felt like a severed thread from a rope I'd spent a lifetime clinging to. I slid into my car, an old sedan, not flashy, but fully mine, and rested my forehead against the steering wheel. The silence didn't scare me this time. I wasn't their errand girl anymore. Not the emotional punching bag. Not the invisible daughter they called when something needed doing. I was done waiting to be wanted. My phone buzzed. A text from Ivy. What was that all about? I stared at it for a moment, then typed back one word, clarity. Then I turned off my phone, started the engine, and drove. Not away from them, but towards something I'd never known before. Peace. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove. No destination, no playlist, just the low hum of tires on asphalt and my thoughts tumbling into the quiet like loose change in a dryer. It was strange how something so loud inside me could make the world feel silent. For years, I'd bent backward just to touch the edges of their love, convinced if I could be more patient, more helpful, more successful, they'd eventually pull me in. But the truth was simple, devastating, and liberating all at once. They never saw me as one of them. I was useful, not beloved. Present, but never welcomed. Somewhere between downtown and the highway, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of my office. A plain building with flickering overhead lights and dusty glass doors, but inside was the one place I felt seen, because I had built it with my own 2 hands. I unlocked the door, walked in, and flipped the lights on. The room greeted me like an old friend. A cheap coffee maker sat on a wobbly table. Stacks of manila folders lined the shelves. My desk was cluttered, a plant with 2 dying leaves sat in the corner, but it was mine. All of it. I sat down at my desk, kicked off my shoes, and stared out the window at the city blinking back at me. I hadn't planned for this rupture. I'd always told myself there'd be one more chance to win them over. One more dinner. One more birthday. But that night, that chair by the trash, the expectation to pay for their indulgence, it wasn't humiliation. It was a mirror. And in that reflection, I didn't see a victim. I saw a woman done begging. The next morning, I arrived early to a meeting with a potential investor. A man named Harris Lang, sharp-dressed, Harvard tie. He glanced around my modest office with polite skepticism. "You're young," he said. "And fully operational," I replied, gesturing to our wall of case studies. Harris raised an eyebrow. "Do you have the backing to scale?" "Not yet," I said, "but I have the blueprint and the numbers. And I don't waste resources proving myself to people who don't plan to stay." He blinked. Then smiled. Interesting approach. By noon, he signed a preliminary agreement. I waited until he left before letting the grin spread across my face. Then I pulled out my phone, took a quick photo of the signed document, and sent it to my assistant with the subject line, "Game on." For the rest of the day, I buried myself in the numbers. Contracts, client plans, expansion goals. My inbox pinged with updates from our partners in Miami and Denver. Everything I had once dreamed of was beginning to take shape, and not a single person at that table had any idea. By the time evening rolled around, I was exhausted but alive. On the drive home, I passed a bakery and bought myself a small lemon tart, the kind I used to save for birthdays no one remembered. Back at my apartment, I lit a candle, played a little jazz, and toasted the tart with a glass of sparkling water. To the girl in the corner chair, I whispered. She got up. That night, I didn't dream of my mother. Or the smirks. Or the table that had never been mine. I dreamed of a long table under open skies. No labels. No assigned seats. Just chairs for anyone who knew how to love without conditions. I woke up smiling. The next day, Ivy texted again, "You really hurt Mom." She didn't mean anything by it. I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed back, "If she didn't mean it, why did she enjoy it?" She never replied. Later that week, I received an invitation in the mail, monogrammed, thick ivory paper. Ivy's bridal shower. Family brunch, it read. I laughed. Not bitterly. Not cruelly. Just with the kind of laugh that comes when the punchline lands exactly where you expect. I didn't RSVP. Instead, I used that morning to meet with a local nonprofit. A housing initiative for women aging out of foster care. I offered to sponsor their next workshop, provide office space for admin work, and mentor 2 applicants a month. The director looked stunned. Why? I smiled, simple and sure. Because I know what it's like to be left out of the room. She nodded. No more questions. Driving home, I passed the restaurant from that night. I almost didn't look. But something made me glance over. It was empty. Closed on Mondays. But in the reflection of the glass, I saw myself, shoulders square, gaze forward. And behind me? No chair. No trash. No table full of people waiting to hand me the bill for their indifference. Just me. And the woman I was becoming. 2 weeks passed. No one called. No apology. No follow-up text. And just like that, the silence I once feared became a kind of sanctuary. I was no longer pacing around waiting for a scrap of attention, a breadcrumb of acknowledgement. I didn't have to explain myself or measure my value against their shifting expectations. Still, some part of me, quieter than before, wondered if they ever sat at that same table again and noticed the empty chair. On a Sunday morning, I stood in my small kitchen, pouring coffee into a chipped mug with a faded quote, "Be your own anchor." A gift I once gave myself after landing my first solo deal. The sun filtered through the blinds, warm and unbothered, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't dread the quiet. Then my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen in a while, Dad. I froze. It wasn't a call. Just a message. "Your mother's not feeling well. Thought you should know." I didn't respond. Not immediately, not that day, not the next. Because I knew that text wasn't about her health. It was a baited line thrown into the water, hoping I was still the kind of daughter who'd bite. Who'd rush back, heart racing, ready to play nurse, mediator, scapegoat. But I wasn't. Instead, I reread the message 3 times. And then I did something I hadn't done in years, I opened my journal. They only reach for you when they need something. You are not their first call because they love you. You are the fallback when their favorite plans fail. The words weren't harsh. They were a diagnosis. That same afternoon, I took a long walk through the old neighborhood, past streets I knew too well. The cracked sidewalk in front of the bakery. The rusted bench outside the library. The park with the carousel that never worked quite right. Everything looked smaller. Like the world had grown but they hadn't. I found myself stopping in front of their house. White shutters, blue door, a flag hanging slightly crooked on the porch. Ivy's engagement photo was in the front window. Her smiling face beside a man whose name I still couldn't remember. I thought about knocking. Then I thought about that night. I turned and walked away. The next day, my firm received its first international client. A family-run business in Spain needing expansion into U.S. markets. We signed a 6-month contract that paid more than my parents had ever earned in a year. After the meeting, I sat back in my chair and stared at the framed quote on my wall, "Build quietly. Let the results speak." They were speaking. I got another message the following Friday. This time from Ivy. "Mom asked if you're coming to the wedding. She said to tell you there'll be room at the table." Room at the table. The irony hit hard. After all these years of being left out, ignored, seated next to trash bins and dismissed like a waitress in her own life, now there was room. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was too late. Instead of responding, I opened a document I had been working on quietly for months. A will. A trust. My company's succession plan. I had listed everything carefully: beneficiaries, legal clauses, contingency plans. There was a section labeled personal letters. I hadn't written them yet. I wasn't sure I ever would. But now, I opened a blank page and started typing. To the family who taught me absence louder than love. You will read this one day when the echo of your silence finally becomes unbearable. And maybe, for once, you'll wonder what I would have said if I had chosen to explain myself. I won't recount every time I was left out, overlooked, laughed at, or used as a placeholder in a story you never intended to share with me. You already know. You lived it. You wrote it. But I will say this: you gave me something. Not love. Not belonging. Not protection. You gave me the will to build a world that didn't include you. And that world? It's warm. It's honest. It's mine. You may not understand how much strength it takes to walk away from the people you're supposed to need most. But I hope someday, you'll understand how much strength it took to stop needing you. And maybe then, you'll finally see me. Not as the errand girl. Not as the backup plan. But as the woman who left the table and built her own. With no fold-out chairs. And no price tag hidden in the check. Ria. I saved the letter but didn't print it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because some messages aren't meant to be delivered. They're meant to be written for closure, not contact. That night, I lit a single candle on my desk. No occasion. Just a ritual I'd started recently to honor my quiet wins. I took a bite of lemon tart, sipped warm tea, and let the silence wrap around me like a well-earned coat. Let them have their table. I was building something better. The wedding invitation arrived 2 days later. Thick cardstock. Gold lettering. The kind that screams status. I stared at it for a long while, turning it over like it might reveal some hidden message. But there was no note. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just an assumption that I'd show up like a well-behaved shadow, dressed in beige and smiling on cue. I didn't respond. Instead, I RSVP'd to a business gala that same weekend, an event I'd previously declined because it overlapped with Ivy's big day. But now? Now I saw it for what it was, my life, unshackled from theirs. The night of the wedding, while they clinked glasses in a rented hall and posed for filtered photos, I stood on a stage under a soft wash of lights, accepting an award for Entrepreneur of the Year. Applause surrounded me, but I only heard one sound in my heart. Myself, finally breathing freely. 3 weeks passed. Then came the email. Subject, can we talk? From my mother. The body was short. I miss you. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we meet for coffee? I read it 3 times, waiting for something more, an admission, a truth, a scrap of real accountability. But there was none. No mention of the fold-out chair. No apology for the years of dismissal. Just a vague appeal wrapped in convenience. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. Forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't about restoring what once was. It was about releasing what would never be. And I had already let go. That weekend, I attended a mentorship brunch for first-generation women entrepreneurs. I listened to stories that mirrored mine, young women told to lower expectations, be grateful, stay small. One of them asked me, how did you finally get them to respect you? I smiled gently. I stopped asking them to, I said. And then I built something they could never take credit for. Gasps. Laughter. Tears. Afterward, a girl no older than 20 handed me a bracelet she'd made by hand. For strength, she said. For your table. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just building a business. I was building a legacy. One that needed no permission. Months passed. I heard through a cousin that the family business, once my father's pride, was struggling. Financial missteps. A lawsuit. Unpaid vendors. They whispered that if I wanted, I could swoop in and save it. But I wasn't in the business of rescue. Especially not for those who left me behind a trash bin. One night, I dreamed I walked past that old table again, but this time, no one was sitting at it. Just empty chairs. Dust. Silence. And then I saw myself, walking away. Calm. Whole. Unbothered. Because the true revenge was never vengeance. It was peace. Years later, I hosted a dinner of my own. It wasn't lavish. No gold-embossed invitations. Just a long wooden table beneath hanging lights in my backyard, surrounded by the people who had stood by me when I had nothing to offer but dreams. We laughed. We toasted. Someone asked, "So, where did all this begin?" I smiled, running my fingers along the grain of the table. "It began the night they gave me a seat by the trash," I said softly. "And I realized I didn't need their table. I could build my own." Everyone went quiet. Then raised their glasses. "To your table," they said. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I'd been left out. I felt like I had arrived.